Elon Musk admits that Walter Isaacson's biography on him stating that he cut off the Starlink services that Ukrainian drones were using to communicate as they launched an attack on Russia is true. A billionaire intervened unilaterally to support America's enemy. Secretary of State Tony Blinken's timidity to object or criticize Musk is a perfect example of why certain critical parts of our society must not be left to corporations in the private sector, as they have no loyalty to person or country, but to their bottom line and their prejudices. Listen as CNN's Jake Tapper gives Blinken every opportunity to condemn Musk. It is clear he is scared of the billionaire, even as his action bordered on treason.
SpaceX CEO Elon Musk has recently confirmed a report that's in Walter Isaacson's new biography of Musk that last year Musk blocked access to his Starlink satellite network in Crimea in order to disrupt a major Ukrainian attack on the Russian Navy there. In other words, Musk effectively sabotaged a military operation by Ukraine, a U.S. ally, against Russia, an aggressor country that invaded a U.S. ally. Should there be repercussions for that?
Jake, I can't speak to a specific episode. Here's what I can tell you. Starlink has been a vital tool for the Ukrainians to be able to communicate with each other, and particularly for the military to communicate in their effort to defend all of Ukraine's territory. It remains so, and I would expect it to continue to be critical to their efforts. So what we would hope and expect is that that technology will remain fully available to the Ukrainians. It is vital to what they're doing.
I don't know that you can't speak to it. You won't speak to it. Musk says he was reportedly afraid that Russia would retaliate with nuclear weapons. Musk says that's based on his private discussions he had with senior Russian officials. Are you concerned that Musk is apparently conducting his own diplomatic outreach to the Russian government? Really, none of this concerns you?
Jake, I can't speak to conversations that may or may not have happened. I don't know. I'm focused on the fact that the technology itself, Starlink, has been really important to the Ukrainians. It remains so. And it should continue to be part of what they're able to call on to be able to communicate with themselves, and again, to have the military be able to communicate. Throughout this Russian aggression, we ourselves have always had to factor in what Russia may do in response to any given thing that we or others do or the Ukrainians do, and we have. But what's so critical now is that Ukraine has had real success over the past year. I was just in Ukraine, as you know. The last time I was there was almost exactly a year ago. In that year, from the last time I was there till this week, the Ukrainians have retaken more than 50% of the territory seized by Russia since February of 2022. They're now engaged in a critical counteroffensive. And we're doing everything we can to maximize our support for them, along with many other countries, so that they can be successful. Starlink is an important part of their success. And as I said, we expect that it will continue to be so.
It sounds like Starlink's so important, the U.S. government doesn't want to risk offending a capricious billionaire who did some things that I think in another situation, the U.S. government might want to say something about.
You know, it's interesting because America likes to give these billionaires kudos as if they are the best thing since apple pie, as if they are geniuses. What they are geniuses in capitalism. Geniuses is using everybody else's skills, everybody else's abilities, make it theirs and monopolize on it. You know, Daily Kos had a story on this particular subject that I loved. And this is how he started to talk about Musk. He said the following: Elon Musk is neither an engineering nor business genius. He didn't found Tesla. He didn't design the motors or the batteries or the cars. He did found space exploration, more familiarly known as SpaceX. But again, he never set his hand to an engineering design, much less a wrench. What Musk did do was recognized that both the automotive and space launch industries were hugely stale, completely populated by people whose policies and technology were relics of the glory days of the long past, and that a determined and lucky run of these targets just might kick their asses. And the reality, I want you to understand what he's saying there. He's saying that the other guys in the private sector as well, you know, the Boeings and all these old guys that built the Apollo, that built the Saturn, and built all these other guys, that they just went stale. Supposedly the private sector is efficient. Supposedly the private sector is always looking for the next best thing. But when you are getting free money from the government, when these corporations are getting welfare and not getting anything for creating anything new, what you get is stagnation. And that is what Elon Musk took advantage of. No matter what people think of Musk's failures at self-driving or the post-apocalyptic design of the extremely late to the party Cybertruck, the truth is that Tesla now holds a position in the automotive industry that its century-plus-old competitors can only envy. Over at SpaceX, Musk has a near monopoly in an industry that others only starting to understand. This week, we got a glimpse of what that means, and that glimpse looked like Musk being able to single-handedly determine who lives or who dies. Again, look at what he did in Ukraine, where he stopped the Ukrainians from getting rid of Russian ships that were launching missiles to kill Ukrainians, which means that single-handedly, Musk was responsible for the murder, for the deaths of many Ukrainians. I want to go further to explain what he's saying here. He says, last week we learned that Musk personally intervened to cut off communications to areas in Ukraine to thwart an attack that was intended to sink Russian warships docked off of occupied Crimea. That attack could have played a significant role in determining the outcome of the war. On Friday, Musk admitted that he took direct action to prevent communications in the area of the attack, which reportedly left Ukrainian drone ships floating helplessly. Soon, some of these ships washed ashore near the Russian fleet and were studied by Russian authorities eager to block future attacks. The Russian Black Sea Fleet has fired hypersonic missiles into civilian structures across Ukraine, resulting in some of the most horrific war crimes of Russia's unprovoked illegal invasion. Those attacks continue today due to the decisions of one man, a billionaire named Elon Musk. Musk pretends that by preventing Ukraine from using the communications gear they had mostly purchased, that he was refusing to play a role on military attack, but he played a role. He chose sides. He chose to protect the Russian warships because he claims he believed Russian propaganda about a nuclear threat. Musk chose to put his own opinion over not only the strategy, but the lives of Ukrainians. They are still paying for this decision in blood, for his decision in blood. Perhaps most astonishingly, just 2 months after Musk decided to pull the plug on the attack, SpaceX announced the Star Shield service, which it advertises as featuring additional high assurance cryptographic capability to host classified payloads and process data securely, meeting the most demanding government requirements. So here he is saying, hey, we are going to make sure that Starlink can serve the needs of the government by giving them the security that they need, but it's still controlled by Musk. Folks, when we talk about there are certain services and that do not belong inside of the private sector, these are the things we're kind of talking about. When I talk about I wrote a book. It's called As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. I pointed out a lot of features within our economic system that does not belong in the private sector because the corporations use it to control us. Let's give an example. The food supply. By having corporations being able to create plants that can generate seeds or not generate seeds, have now caused farmers not to be able to bank many of their seeds, but having to go back to corporations every year to get the seeds that they want to plant, right? Again, they own the patents, and if your pollen blows into another place, it's suddenly you have to pay the corporations because you are now growing their product. The same apply to many patents for drugs, etc. These things do not belong in the private sector. Now we see a clear example where one person, a billionaire, because he controls communication, which nobody should control up in space, right? Because he controls that, he can determine if he's going to allow the signal to allow a government who is defending themselves against another violent government. He's deciding, I am not going to allow you to go ahead and use these services to do what you need to get done. Communications, he's just proven things that I've said before. Communications do not belong in the private sector. Certain forms of energy, distribution, etc., does not belong in the private sector. Healthcare does not belong in the private sector because these are things that we must have. These are the things that we need. And by keeping these things or having these things in the private sector, we're giving the private sector, the corporations, veto power over the things that we need. Not only veto power, but extortive power over the things that we need. We give them the ability to blackmail us as citizens of countries because they control it. It is time now. First of all, Musk proves, I think, clearly proves what he has done with Starlink, that Starlink cannot be controlled by the private sector. People may say, but he innovated it. He didn't innovate it. All these technologies were developed at NASA and other places and refined in these different companies. Musk is doing nothing new or gallant or nothing new or effective that no other organization cannot do. He's just a person who was able to take advantage of the old dogs who are not doing the work that they got so used to sucking on the government's you know what that they didn't perform. Well, he has shown that in his performance and his evil, he is a danger. He's a clear and present danger, not only to America, but also to the world. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.